What's going on, guys? PC here. In this video I wanted to talk a bit about Omikron, the Nomad Soul. This is a game that I've been playing through recently, and actually for the third time. I've never actually completed the game. I got stuck a couple times in the past. I started the game years ago, well, not just started, probably maybe a week ago I started playing through it again. And man, am I enjoying playing through this game. It is difficult at times. There are puzzles in the game that are quite difficult to figure out, but it's a lot of fun. Now, if you don't know what Omicron is, it's an open world, I'd say, kind of an adventure game, but it's interesting because it's a very crazy mishmash of genres. Not only do you have adventure elements, kind of similar to a point-and-click adventure game where you need to go around and find certain items in order to solve puzzles and progress the story, but you also have fighting game elements in this as well. You have whole fighting sequences which play exactly like a typical 3D fighter, say like Soul Calibur, where you're focused on the enemy and you can strafe all around them and do various moves, different combos, and it actually gets quite in depth. There are quite a few moves that you can do in the game. I didn't get that much into it. I'm not big into fighters, so I usually just ended up circling around the enemy and spamming the uppercut, which actually seemed to work most of the time. So you don't need to be that great at fighters to progress through the game, but it has some really deep elements to it that you can really get into. Probably not the greatest 3D fighter in the world, maybe a little bit clunkier than your average, but it's interesting. And there are also first-person shooter segments in this game, which are interesting. I'd say they are probably the weakest part of this game, mainly because they're so clunky to control. I suppose the PC version would be much better with a keyboard and mouse, but on the Dreamcast, with the Dreamcast controller, controlling these segments can be a chore. Fortunately, you do get used to it. It does kind of get okay after a while, but definitely not the strongest part of this game by any stretch of the imagination. And in addition to the clunky controls, enemies do tend to shoot you through walls, which is kind of annoying, as you might imagine. But I'll get into the negatives of the game a bit later. I just wanted to kind of give you an idea of what the game's like. So as far as the storyline goes, the story is very interesting. This is probably one of the most third wall breaking games ever created, and that is mainly because you are literally part of this game. The game starts out as you, or your soul, is transferred into the game. You as the player have been, I guess, kind of conned or tricked into purchasing this game in order to collect your soul. And this is, I'm not going to say who or what is responsible for that quite yet because I don't want to spoil anything. I'm not going to actually say anywhere in this video who that is, but you'll figure that out if you play the game. But the storyline is really interesting, and your whole goal of the game is basically to get your soul back and save the city of Omicron as a kind of secondary but primary goal as well. But it's a very interesting storyline, and I really enjoyed. Actually, I haven't completed the game yet. I'm very, very close to the end. I'll probably end up completing it after I finish this video. But yeah, it's a very intriguing story, and I think you'll really enjoy it if you like a good storyline in a video game. So let me go over a few of the things that I like and dislike about the game. I'll start off with what I like about it. Now, this game has one of the most immersive worlds I've ever seen in a video game. The developers did a fantastic job of portraying this dystopian alternate reality, this city of Omicron, which is kind of run down and bleak and dark, I guess you could say. And they did a great job of portraying this. And the game, the world is so amazing to explore. It's really cool. And it even surpasses Shenmue in a lot of aspects, mainly because of the freedom you have in the game to explore. Now, Shenmue, yeah, you can explore, you can go into various buildings and things like that, but Omicron, I think, has more buildings that you can go into, and there are no load screens. You can go to anywhere. I mean, there are certain, there are various blocks, or, not blocks, what am I looking for? Various parts of the city that you can unlock as you progress the story. But once you have them all unlocked, you can freely travel between them, and there are no load screens, like I said, which is amazing. The game accomplishes this by loading on the fly, basically. So you will encounter stuttering in the game when you go through doors and things like that to load the inside of a building or the outside. But other than that, the game has no load screens. It's a really amazing technical feat for the Dreamcast, and I applaud the developers for pulling this off. Yes, the game does have some frame rate issues. Obviously, the smoother experience would be on the PC, but in my opinion, the Dreamcast version is always better, no matter what the technical limitations. But the open world goes hand in hand with the adventure elements of the game, because you want this really immersive and interesting world to explore while you're trying to actually progress the story and solve puzzles and things of that nature. As I said, there are a lot of point-and-click adventure elements to this game where you need to find certain items in order to progress. And in order to do that, you'll need to be very thorough in the way you explore the various locations that you come across. So if you go into, say, an apartment, you'll want to make sure you check every nook and cranny of the place and make sure you find everything. And you want to check the wall for pictures that move, or maybe a wall safe behind a picture. It's a little bit of a spoiler alert there. Even animal heads on the wall might be a switch. Or you might have a crack in the floor which has something inside. Who knows? There are tons of different things to find in the various places, and you want to make sure you're really thorough about looking around and make sure you find everything that you need to proceed. And this is a lot of fun because I personally love point-and-click adventure games like the Maniac Mansion games and the Monkey Island series, one of my favorite game series of all time. And there are a lot of elements like that in this game, and I really enjoy that. There are a lot of puzzle elements in the game as well. I think the closest comparison would be the Uncharted series, where you go into these caves and various tombs and things like that, where you have, say, pillars that have various symbols on them, and you need to arrange them in a certain order. And there are a lot of things like that in this game. That brings me to one of the things I don't like so much about this game is a lot of the puzzles can be fairly vague and very difficult to figure out, and I actually had to consult a walkthrough at quite a few points in the game in order to actually figure them out. So if you're not extremely good at puzzles, you might have a hard time without a walkthrough. In comparison, something like the Uncharted series, I didn't have to use a walkthrough for any of the puzzles in there, although a lot of people do agree that the puzzles in Uncharted are fairly easy. But yeah, I didn't have any problems with that, but I did have a problem with a lot of the puzzles in Omikron. There were quite a few very difficult puzzles. So another really cool element of this game is Reincarnation. Now, this allows you to take over other bodies in the game. So, for example, in the beginning of the game, your soul is initially transferred into the body of a cop, and he's actually a sort of integral part of the storyline, at least to introduce you to what's going on in Omikron. But later in the game, you'll actually get a reincarnation spell that you can use to take over bodies of various residents of Omikron, various NPCs that are around the world. And you can't take over the body of every NPC you see, but there are certain ones that you can go up to and you hit the action button and it'll kind of hint that you can take over their body and give you an idea of what the advantages would be if you took over this person's body. For example, you might need to solve a certain puzzle in the game where you can only get into a certain area by being a certain person. So you can actually go and find that person, take over their body, and then you can access that area. And there are also other reasons why you might want to take over another body. For example, a body you find or person, NPC, whatever, might have better fighting skills than you. So you can actually take over their body and you'll be a much better fighter. And that actually brings me to a minor gripe about this game, and that is the fact that when you take over another body in the game, you lose some of your fighting skills, or I should say all of your fighting skills. Now, in the game, let me explain a little bit more. When you are fighting, you have a certain fighting level, and you actually can train by using these virtual fighting simulators that are usually found in apartments. And you can use these fighting simulators to up your experience with fighting and up your level. You get different experience levels and you'll learn different moves and things of that nature. And so if you do all this training and then you go and take over another body, you'll lose all of that training you did and you'll have to do it all over again. Unless, of course, the person that you, or the body NPC that you take over has better fighting skills or equal fighting skills to you, then it's not a big deal. But yeah, it's kind of a minor gripe about the game that I have. So the final thing I want to mention for my positives about the game is the fact that David Bowie wrote and recorded songs specifically for this game. And I think that is awesome. It's not actually the background music in the game. In fact, there isn't a whole lot of background music, except with the exception of the fighting sequences and the first-person shooter sequences. They have kind of heart-pounding music in the background. But other than that, there's a lot of atmospheric background noise and things like that, but not actually a whole lot of music. With the exception of the intro, and I'm sure the credits as well, you have David Bowie's music in the background of those, but the main place you'll find David Bowie's original music is in these secret concerts that you can find in the various districts of Omicron. So if you explore around, there are a few different locations where you'll find these concert flyers, or secret concert flyers, and they'll actually direct you to a place where David Bowie, as part of the Dreamers, that's the band that they're called in the game, they'll actually have locations where they'll perform concerts, and you can find them using the directions on these flyers. And it's really cool. You go in and you get this cutscene where David Bowie will perform and sing this original song that was written for the game, which is really cool. So if you're a big David Bowie fan, if you're a David Bowie fan in general, I think you'll really enjoy that element of this game. Alright, so on to some negatives. Omikron is far from a perfect game. It is a bit buggy, first off. I think sort of Bethesda buggy, the Elder Scrolls and the Fallout games. Nothing too game-breaking, or nothing game-breaking at all as far as I could tell, but occasionally it gets stuck in doors and walls, and sometimes, as I said in the first-person shooter segments, you'll get shot at by enemies through walls, which is quite annoying. Even one boss battle, where you're fighting this big, giant demon thingy, a little bit of spoiler there, he comes out of this lava, and he stays in the middle of the lava pit, but you can actually exit and come back, or go back to where you came from, which is a different offshoot of the cave. And even as you exit the area where the boss is, he'll still be shooting you through the wall, which, as you might imagine, is really annoying, especially considering this boss is actually quite difficult. And it's also a first-person shooter segment, which is, yeah, as I said, clunky and kind of hard to control. It was a bit frustrating, but luckily the boss actually goes down pretty quickly if you can do it right. But yeah, it's a bit annoying. The game definitely is a bit buggy. There's even one portion of the game where I ended up swimming under the map. Yes, it's actually one of the concert locations for the Dreamers. There's this big pool of water in the middle, and you can jump in, and if you dive down, you can actually dive through the floor and underneath the map. I thought that was kind of hilarious. Actually, I have some footage that you're probably looking at right now. Yeah, game's a bit buggy. So another negative I have about Omikron are the puzzles. Now, this may not be a negative for everyone. It depends on your skill level when it comes to solving puzzles, but I found them to be very difficult. As I mentioned earlier, I needed to consult a walkthrough quite a few times when trying to solve the various puzzles in the game. Now, they are very well thought out by the developers, I'll give them that, but the clues on how to solve them are hard to find themselves. So, I mean, even after consulting a walkthrough, I'm thinking to myself, how was I supposed to figure that out? And now, I imagine they did obviously give you clues for all the various puzzles, but where to find those clues can be very vague. I couldn't figure out how you were actually supposed to figure out the puzzles. So yeah, it's pretty crazy when you can't figure out how you're supposed to figure out how to figure out the puzzles. But yeah, I found the puzzles to be quite difficult, but then again, if you're really good at puzzles or like difficult and challenging puzzles, that might be a plus for you. And finally, I've already mentioned this before, but the first-person shooter segments of this game are by far the weakest part of the whole experience. They're very clunky using the Dreamcast controller, and of course, like I said, about the bugs, enemies shooting you through walls, that can be quite annoying. Definitely, I wouldn't say I would have removed them from the game entirely, because I do think they add a little bit of variety to the game. And of course, if you're playing on PC, it's probably going to be a better experience using a keyboard and a mouse. Of course, enemies are still probably going to shoot you through walls, but at least the controls would be fairly good, I would imagine. But yeah, I mean, it does add some variety to the game. I did get frustrated a couple times, especially during one first-person shooter segment where you're actually timed, and yeah, that was quite annoying. Although when I actually did beat it, I figured out there was actually plenty of time. They give you quite a generous amount of time to complete it, but it was kind of frustrating because I was trying to go through it quickly, thinking I didn't have much time. And yeah, going through that whole thing with the controls, and it was a bit annoying. But yeah, the first-person shooter elements, again, you do get used to the controls after a while, so they aren't too bad. But yeah, definitely not the best part of the game. So now for my conclusion on Omikron, the Nomad Soul. Is it a good game? Yes. Yes, it is definitely a good game, at least in my opinion. It is not perfect by any means, but I really did enjoy exploring around the world of Omikron and the various districts and cities. I thought it was a really cool experience. Although I haven't actually finished the game, I'm very close. I think I'm at the final boss battle, but I played through most of the game, and it's been a really fun experience. Again, I did get frustrated at points with the puzzles and things, but with the help of a walkthrough, that can be avoided. Or if you're really, really good at puzzles, then yeah, you might enjoy those really difficult and challenging puzzles. But yeah, it's just been a really fun experience overall, and I definitely would highly recommend this game, especially if you like David Bowie. The secret concerts in the game, that's really cool. The fact that you get original music from David Bowie in this is really cool. But yeah, it is definitely a really fun game in my opinion, and I do highly recommend checking this out. If you're into point-and-click adventure sort of elements, or puzzle elements, sort of like Uncharted, even fighting games, I think you'll really enjoy this. If you're just into first-person shooters, probably avoid this one. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. I definitely have highly enjoyed playing through this game. But anyway guys, that's it for this video. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to comment, rate, and subscribe. And thanks for watching.